It's a beautiful day. So many times here on this here podcast, I have talked about unity over the years. Unity is a very important thing, but it has also traditionally, in my experience, become a very powerful weapon that could be used against conservatives and used against Christians. Because traditionally, something that I have noticed is that conservatives generally have something called a conscience. They want to do the right thing, at least sincere conservatives, actual conservatives. I've talked about that too. There's a huge swath of people, probably now more than ever, pretending to be conservatives, and they don't actually hold any conservative values whatsoever. But anyway, that's beside the point. Conservatives, typically, if they're sincere conservatives, they have a conscience. They want to do the right thing. Christians should have a conscience. We should want to do the right thing. And unity is a good thing. Unity sounds like a good word. We want to have unity with people. You know, even the Bible says you should have unity with each other. You should not divide with each other. And I have talked about this multiple times in previous episodes. And look, it's coming back again. Go figure. Because it is a very powerful weapon that is almost all the time used by very bad people to try to pull people out, to deceive them, to use their conscience, to use good people's conscience, and pull them out of a good conservative or Christian worldview. And that's what's happening today. So back in, this has always happened, but back in, let's say, 2020, there were just loads of people criticizing conservatives for, whoa, you don't want to get a vaccine that you're not sure if it's actually good for you or not. You want to actually do research? What are you, crazy? You don't believe you don't believe what the government tells you? Come on. What? You got to have unity with your fellow Americans. You are being divisive if you are not thoughtlessly taking this mandated vaccine. You are being thoughtlessly divisive if you don't, lock your church down and disobey God about worshiping weekly. You're being divisive. And so this idea of unity is flipped on its head. You can revisit my previous episodes where I like every single time this rears its ugly head in the culture, I've talked about it. And it's always coming from people, this attack on unity, this flipping of unity on its head, exclusively, all the time, comes from people utilizing an unchristian worldview. They come from people constantly utilizing a leftist worldview, a progressive worldview. It's not traditional, it's not Christian, they don't care about truth, they don't care about being obedient to Scripture, they care about their own desires, they care about the desires of the group over the truth of Scripture, over traditional values, over actual morality. And hey, it's what we're seeing again today. There has been so it is my sincere belief, and it's also obvious if you have eyeballs in your head, that there are some really wicked people that have been infiltrating the conservative movement. Now, a lot of people, I've used the word woke right before. I think that's a really good term because it makes them really mad. But don't get confused. They're not right wing. The woke right are not right wing. That's the only problem I have with the name. But I think it's a really good name because it draws the distinction between, well, they're not right. They're woke right. They're pretending to be right. But anyway, before it was the left, and now it's still the left, they are just pretending to be right. And so the thing that they're doing now is they're saying, hey, you can't have any enemies to the right. Now, I sort of almost agree with that, except it's twisted, like most things from the left are, like most things from people who don't care about biblical truth are. It's completely twisted. And so right-wing values, things like actual patriotism, things like actually loving your nation, things like actually loving your neighbor, things like actual traditional morality. Like those are all right-wing values, and those are all good things. Those are all truly good things. And so if somebody embodies those values more than you, then arguably you could conclude that they are to the right of you. And so those people should not be our enemies. Except the problem here is the people who are saying no enemies to the right, they are saying that they are to your right, and they are wicked, awful, obnoxious, brutally wicked people. People like Candace Owens, for example. Matt Walsh, I like Matt Walsh, but I think he's being unimaginably stupid recently with this take. But something that a lot of people are saying, something that Matt Walsh is pushing, something that people like Nick Fuentes, people like Candace Owens, all these people are pushing this idea of no enemies to the right. They're saying, one, Candace Owens, I am more right-wing than you because I am cool with Hitler. That makes me more right-wing than you. Even though, look, I've said on my podcast so many times, I can't imagine how people are falling for this. Hitler loved big government. Is big government or small government a right-wing value? Typically. It's small government. Right-wing people, American right-wingers, have always loved small government. Left-wingers love big government. Therefore, Candace Owens' love of big government, of tyranny, and then you would say, well, I don't like leftist tyranny. It's like, okay, but whatever, like tyranny is leftist tyranny. Tyranny is a leftist value. And so if you love big government, if you love Adolf Hitler, who was an actual tyrant, which a lot of people are. Another thing, by the way, if you haven't listened to my podcast, you might bristle at being like, oh, it's talking about Nazis? Those people don't exist. If you believe that, you're living under a rock, because I would have said the same thing 5 years ago, because there were almost no professing Nazis that existed, and people like me were branded Nazis all the time by the left just because we wanted to keep our churches open, or because we didn't want to get a vaccine that we weren't sure if it was going to kill us or not, right? Regardless of your position on those things are not, like, those things are tyrannical, right? The government telling you to do something that it has no right to tell you to do is actually tyrannical. And so the left would say, oh, you're Nazis because you believe that. Now, that, or like you're a fascist or whatever, and then the whole group Antifa was invented, even though the Antifa they aligned more closely with the actual definition of fascism than the people who they were fighting against, right? Except now, there are actually professing fascists. There are actually professing Nazis. And the reason that this happened is because, the left has beaten people considering themselves right-wing, and a lot of those people considering themselves right-wing, they maybe haven't thought through their worldview ever in their lives, and so they weren't prepared for this kind of barrage from the left. And so they thought, well, all I know in the whole world is that the left is evil, which is true. And so whatever the left says, I'm going to do exactly the opposite of that. Now, which ironically means the left is still controlling you. If you do exactly the opposite of everything that the left does, the left is still controlling you, and also you're still a leftist. Because that's what the left wants you to do. Notice, the left is assassinating people like Charlie Kirk, who are just normal, faithful Christians. They're not assassinating radicals like Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes, because they are allies of the left. They're buddies. They're on the same team, actually. Hitler was a leftist. Hitler loved big government. He loved censorship. He loved murdering people who he disagreed with. Like, all of these are leftist values. And the fact that people don't broadly understand this is crazy. You might have heard of something in history. I'm kind of getting off topic, but this matters. You might have heard of something in American history called the Great Reset. No, not the Great Reset. What am I thinking? The Great Switch, the Great Reset is something else entirely. You might have heard of something in American history called the Great Switch. And there's this idea that a lot of people have probably heard. This has been an idea for a couple of generations at this point, where basically the idea is at some point in American history, and we can't exactly say when, the Democrats and the Republicans switched. The values of the Democrat and the Republican Party switched. Now that's interesting. Many years ago, I just heard that so many times, like propaganda. You repeat it enough, and eventually you just believe it. You assume it's true because you hear it from enough places. But in reality, that's exactly what it is. It is propaganda. It's leftist propaganda. Because here's why this is fake. The values of the Republican Party and the Democrat Party have broadly been exactly the same ever since the inception of the parties. So we should ask ourselves, who would benefit from making you believe that the values of the Democrats and the Republicans were switched? This is exactly the same thing that's happening today, by the way. And this always comes from leftists. It always comes from people who don't care about the truth. They don't actually care about tradition. They don't care about history. They don't care about. They're not Christians. They don't care about the Bible. The things that America were founded on, they don't actually care about. And so ask yourself, who would benefit from making you believe that the Democrat and the Republican Party switched? Well, what was one of the worst things in history that the Democrat Party participated in? Enabling slavery in America. Let's say that. And so the Democrat Party, they're not completely stupid. They're like 99% stupid. But even awful people have a conscience, have at least a little bit of a conscience, right? And so they think, man, slavery was really bad. And so they think, wouldn't it be awesome if we could just lie about slavery and say, actually, it wasn't the Democrat Party, it was the Republican Party? Oh, dang it. Except people could just open up their history books and they could see that the Democrat Party enabled slavery. Dang it. Okay, well, what about the KKK? We can blame that on the Republican Party, can't we? Oh, shoot. Actually, that was the Democrat Party too. Doggone it. And so, because they have their own morality has painted them into a corner, here's what they do. Because they have at least a couple of brain cells to knock around. They say, let's convince everybody that the Democrat and the Republican Party switched, so that we can say at the same time, like 2 + 2 = 5 from 1984, doublespeak, we can say something completely untrue and also something else completely untrue at the same time, and have the benefit of people believing both of those things. So we can say that, yes, the Democrat Party actually did do slavery and do the KKK and whatever, but at some point in history, the Democrat and the Republican Party actually switched. So we get to blame the Republican. We just get to make that up. That's a totally false fact. There's no historical evidence backing that whatsoever. And we get to blame the Republican Party for slavery and for the KKK and for all sorts of other things, even though it was the Democrats who did it. This also happened with Hitler. The liberals around the planet thought, oh man, Hitler was a liberal, right? I mean, it's obvious that Hitler was a liberal. Hitler has all of our same values. Yes, he didn't like communism, and a lot of us like communism, but fascism is identical to communism. And so somebody asked me one time, he's like, well, if Hitler was a fascist, and if fascism is the same thing as communism, how come he wanted to kill communists? And my answer was, because communists want to kill each other all the time. Leftists want to kill each other all the time. That's not evidence against it. Murderous psychopaths exist on the left from the beginning of history. So this is more evidence that Hitler was leftist, right? But the idea, historically speaking, the left was like the liberals across the planet were like, oh man, Hitler is a bad guy. We don't want to be associated with Hitler. Let's invent a scheme where we can convince people that Hitler was actually right-wing. How are we going to do that? Let's say that there is this spectrum, and on one end is communism, which we are because we love communism, says the Marxists, says the Frankfurt School people. And on the other end, on the far other end, is fascism, even though they're identical. Now, this is where the idea of horseshoe theory comes from. But I don't even like horseshoe theory. I think it's more like, I think it is a straight line, and fascism and tyranny is on one end, and freedom is on the other end. This is the political spectrum that we ought to understand, that we're actually on. Freedom is on one end, tyranny is on the other. Right-wing values equate freedom. Right-wing values equate Christianity. Left-wing values equate tyranny and slavery and liberalism and Satanism. So that's one end, and then the other is freedom. So this is how reality actually works. And so the liberals, as they do, they start sharing propaganda that says the left is not actually an ally of Hitler, because, I mean, Hitler was so bad, even we recognize he was bad, and we're awful people. And so we're going to convince you that Hitler was actually right-wing instead. We're going to say Hitler was so far right-wing that, even the right-wing people, they don't want to associate with him either, obviously. But we can, by calling him far right, we can have our cake and eat it too, because the right-wing people can be like, okay, well, far right is bad. And we get to associate him with the right at the same time and not take the blame. So these are things that actually happened. And the result of this today is that conservatives who haven't read their history books, conservatives who don't know these things, they think, oh, well, the farther right you are, the more you love tyranny, the more you love murder. And, well, I grew up learning that right wing is a good thing, which is true. And so there's truth mixed with lies here. These people, they grow up, they go to public school or whatever, they see the way the left is acting, and I'm like, okay, whatever the opposite of that is good. And they have bought into the propaganda, believing that the love of murder is far right, that tyranny is far right, even though it's far left, that the love of Hitler is far right, that censorship is far right, that the Crusades, that religious extremism is far right, even though none of these things are far right. Was the Catholic Pope who called for the Crusades, was he a biblical conservative? Was he understanding the Bible properly when he said that the Crusaders, if they die in battle killing the infidel, that they would go directly to heaven? When he instituted the first indulgence, which is what the Crusades were, when he instituted the very first indulgence to say that your soul will be saved if you murder my enemies, was that biblical conservatism? Absolutely not. And so, history repeats itself because we don't know our history. It is allowed to repeat itself, and the people who do know their history are doomed to watch other people repeat it. And so a lot of people are claiming to be conservatives because they have given in to the leftist propaganda. They are doing exactly what the left wants them to do, and sharing all of their own values while destroying actual conservatives. And the way that they're doing this now is by saying, we can't have any enemies to the right. And because I love tyranny, and I love murder, and I love Hitler, and I love fascism, and whatever, and I love using the Bible as a weapon in order to oppress the people I don't like, regardless of what the Bible actually says, then I'm more far right than you. Even though that's not reality. That's not how it works at all. And because people aren't thoughtful about these things, they don't think these things through, they believe people like Candace Owens is more far right than you. And people who want to unite with moral degenerates like Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes and Joel Webben and their followers, and Matt Walsh is going in this direction, and so many conservative commentators are going in this direction because, and here's why. Because you know how there were so many companies back in, around like 2018 to 2023 who started doing the gay profile pictures and, the pride marches and whatever, and like really catering towards those audiences. A lot of companies are still doing it today, but it's dropping off. Why would they do that? We know that they are a minority. We know that the actual, homosexual degenerates are a minority. That's where the phrase "go woke," what is it? Get woke, go broke, comes from. Where if you actually get woke and you push that in your business, if you incorporate woke DEI tactics into your business strategies, you will go broke. And it has been proven time and time again. There has not been at all a single successful marketing campaign from a huge company pushing the pride crap. Now, exactly the same thing is happening today. A lot of these conservative commentators, they care about their audience. They care about, quote unquote conservative. I think they're not acting like conservatives right now. I wouldn't call Matt Walsh not a conservative, but I'd say he's being terribly inconsistent. There can be inconsistent conservatives, but he might not be a conservative. I don't know, because he's doing a really good job at making it seem like he's not a real conservative right now with this stupid unifying with moral degenerates crap. But geez Louise, the idea is that they have fallen for this propaganda to believe that, okay, these people really are more far right than you, and I really do believe the right wing is a good thing, which it is, that's true. Therefore, we have to unite with these people because unity with our allies is a good thing if they are truly allies. But they don't understand good and evil. This shows that these people do not understand good and evil. People calling themselves pastors are saying this kind of thing. No enemies to the right. We got to unify with people on the right, except for those people that I disagree with, because I'm going to label them as leftists, even though they are the leftists. It's pitiful. It's disgusting. And we are falling for it because we don't understand our own history. Because we have bought into leftist propaganda and we're letting this give us the impression that murder and tyranny and disregard for any biblical truth whatsoever is actually right wing. It's insane. That's not reality. It's not reality.